Oh, Canada.
Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
No, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.
What's up, y'all? It is it's May 20th, 2025. Let's get into this day in NBA history. May 20th, 1996, Michael Jordan receives an MVP voting with a 96.5%. 96.5% win percentage for first place votes. The only other guys that got votes in those in that voting was Penny Hardaway got 2 first place votes, Hakeem got 1, and Karl Malone got 1. Jules, what do you think? Do you think Michael Jordan should have got a unanimous MVP or in that 96 season when the Bulls went 72-10?
To me, probably yes. I think when you're setting at that time the greatest record in NBA history, I think he should have probably been the first unanimous guy.
Anybody else you think should have got unanimous too? Or
I think LeBron should have got it in 2013. When we talk about media trying to vote for these guys, the reason why LeBron didn't win notoriously was a New York sports reporter voting for Carmelo Anthony. He made the claim that without Carmelo Anthony on the Knicks, they were kind of a bottom-dwelling team. If you take LeBron off that team, the Heat or the Heatles are still a playoff contention. And to me, I think that's a very skewed way in thinking. And we were basically robbed of 2 people being unanimous MVP before Steph Curry.
Well, I think 2000 Shaq should be up in there too. He got 1 other vote. Everybody else voted for him except one guy. Let's say it was in Atlanta, voted for Iverson. They went 67-15. Shaq was clearly just the best player in the world at the time. So that's one that really stuck out for me. But that is what it is, and that was this day in NBA history.
I'm about to get mine and it's about time. Call us Grindhouse, everybody in a house grind. I'm just doing me, I ain't trying to outshine. Trying to kill my vibe is how you get outlined.
So what's up? So today with the recent Jason Tatum injury and how that's changed the landscape, we thought we'd go over some injuries, maybe missed opportunities that changed the landscape throughout the course of the NBA history. My man Jules has come up with a list of 10. We'll see how he's put them in order, and then we'll dive into them. Maybe there'll be some in there that I might want to add that he hasn't added, but let's see where we're at. So we got it coming in course at number 10.
So I do want to say I do have a couple honorable mentions. So how I tried to rank them was purely based off of how we see an NBA player today and kind of how it could have affected their legacy, how we kind of see them, and how the team dynamic then shifted for this specific person. So for my couple honorable mentions that I want to throw out there, Elgin Baylor in 1965, his knee, basically during the right before the playoffs, how that kind of affected the Lakers was that, Jerry West kind of is notoriously known for an all-time job in getting into that finals against the Celtics, and they were blown out 4-1. But I don't think it's as impactful because Elgin Baylor is an all-time great player, but I don't know if he could have been enough to where they could have stole either another game or even make that a competitive series. So that's why he's more of an honorable mention, because I do think 65 Celtics is one of the greatest teams of all time. So I don't even think a sidekick could have been a real threat to that dynasty that they're creating. What do you think about that?
No, I don't think 65 would have been enough to swing it, because would they win in 6? They beat them in 5, right? 4-1.
Yeah, they beat them in 5.
Yeah,
So
so that's what I'm saying. I don't think so. Bare minimum, that means you have to take one game off the Celtics. That's one, and then you have to swing three more games. Right, so bare minimum, you have to keep, you alone have to be worth a 4 game swing.
yes,
I
and
don't.
exactly. Yeah, I don't think that one person, even though he's very valuable as that time, could have swung
Mhm.
a series who was then beaten in 5 games to make it a 7 game series. I just don't think that impact is there. No offense to Elgin Baylor, but I just don't think it was a great enough impact for that team. My another honorable mention was Pat Ewing in '99. Um, he got injured in the conference finals,
Mhm.
and what was his Achilles injury, and what I barely remember because I am young, but I'm a Spurs fan, is that the Knicks had some type of momentum, even though the Pat Ewing did go down and definitively win that series in '99, that lock and shortened season. But
Mhm.
I don't know if Pat Ewing could have slowed down Tim Duncan, because Tim Duncan, that final series that he had is definitely all time great. But Pat Ewing is also an all time great defender, so we could have seen somewhere to where instead of Timmy averaging these absurd numbers, they could have been down a little bit. But I just don't know if that would have been the decisive factor for having the Twin Towers of Robinson and Tim Duncan to slow them down in any way, shape, or form.
No, I don't think. I don't think it would have. I think it definitely would have helped the Knicks. I remember watching that run because Larry Johnson is my all-time favorite player, so I
Right.
was heavily invested in the run. So what happened was is they beat the Heat in 5.
Yeah.
They beat the Heat in 5 in that series, and the year before that they had beat the Heat in 5. The year before that they had lost to the Heat in 7 because of suspensions and a fight and things like that. And to be
Right.
honest with you, this is an injury, but I did want to bring it up, and since we kind of led into that with these Knicks, I think one of the bigger what ifs would have been the '97 Knicks if they didn't get in that fight where PJ Brown suplexes Charlie Ward into the front
Mm-hmm.
row, and then they mixed and matched. And I don't remember exactly how it went down, but basically like Ewing and Starks were suspended for Game 6, while Larry Johnson and Allen Houston were suspended for Game 7. You know what I mean? So they mixed and matched, and the Knicks were. I think it proved it years after that because the Knicks beat them in '98, they beat them in '99, they beat them in 2000. They were up 3-1 on that team. What I really liked about that is that took away from that Bulls Knicks matchup, which I think would have been the hardest test for Jordan and the Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
Um, could be wrong, we'll never see it, but they split the season series that year 2-2. The Bulls won by a combined 3 points. They won one game by 2 points. They won another game by a point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's close as I've ever seen somebody play the Bulls with a multitude of matchups, especially in the Eastern Conference. So yeah, I mean that took away from it. Now as far as the '99 run, with Patrick Ewing, he had Marcus Camby as well. So Camby and Ewing were two shot blockers, rim protectors, rebounders. So I think with that, yeah, I definitely think that would have helped. Now, how much it would have helped, I don't know. Game or two, maybe. Game 5 that they lost, the Knicks were up that entire game. They really should have won
Yeah.
it. They probably should have
Yeah.
won Game 4 too. I mean, it was really just the first 2 games that we were kind of knocked out of, and even then, they were only losing by like 12 points or something like that. So I don't
Right.
know. I don't know exactly how big the deal was, but I definitely think Ewing would have helped. I think having another 7 footer against two predominant 7 footers. I think that can only help you. It can't hurt you.
Right, right, and I think that that's perfectly well said. And Oakley and Ewing could have definitely battled a very young Timmy, and then a soon-to-be aging David Robinson. That would have been very decisive. But I just don't know how the impact would have been. Again, it's kind of a hypothetical kind of rabbit hole. So
Well, they're all hypotheticals. That's what
right,
we're.
right. That's what we're doing. Right. So my next name was um, Kareem and his ankle in 1980. And where I see the impact was because we all notoriously know Magic went out and played center for him and basically got that Finals MVP. But a lot of people, especially young guys, failed to contextualize that Kareem, up to that point, was favored to win Finals MVP and was having these dominant 40, damn near 40-20 performances and leading the team. It was just more of this I almost contextualize it as like a moment. Even though it's a full game, it's a moment of Magic being able to play center, where we're not seeing any other 6'9" point guards play center for a game and be able to battle against Daryl Dawkins and that Sixers team. So
Right.
I think contextually, it could have been, obviously Kareem didn't get injured. He wins another Finals MVP. He has another accomplishment, and for totality of his GOAT kind of debate, that I think he would probably be a lot stronger, and I think we would hear a lot of people more saying that it would be, he'd still decisively be in most people's, I think, top 3, top 4, top 5, but his strength would be a lot stronger because he now has another Finals MVP under his belt, and his longevity now gains a little bit more because now it's another accomplishment. He's leading another team, and it's more of Magic's flair doesn't takes another year to kind of develop for that team. He's decisively the second best person on that team, and we see him in the next 10 years obviously flourish, but it's more of, we don't see the greatness as early for Magic as we do later on. You know what I mean?
What do you see for Magic though? So now he's got 2 Finals MVPs instead of 3. Where does that impact his legacy?
I think that I don't know if it really impacts him as much. And I again, he's another person in a lot of people's top 10s, top 15s in that GOAT debate. I still think that, or at least up until now, I think it'd be easier for somebody like a Steph to be put at that number 1 comparison compared to Magic, because I still have Magic number 1, but I think it would just that conversation for like who's our GOAT point guard would be a lot weaker compared to what it is now, because that is a big moment that a lot of people bring up. I don't see Steph Curry playing center in a finals game. I'm seeing Magic being able to, win a finals MVP for this moment. So again, it weakens his legacy overall. It's ever so slightly in that conversation more than he had.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm one of the people, I think Kareem still should have the Finals MVP. He was just by far the better player for 5 out of the 6 games. I guess it showed when went down that Magic was able to step up in the narrative, the 20-year-old rookie. Obviously that incites newspaper headlines as well, especially back then in 1980, because you were still making money off a newspaper headline.
Right.
We didn't have social media, we didn't have cable, we didn't have any of these things. So, yeah, no, I see it. I don't know how much it would move the needle for people that are staunch against this and staunch for it. Really, as you notice, most people's, the only correct answer for the GOAT or where anybody's at is their answer. If you
Right.
if you've learned anything, I'm one of those people. I think players have a range. I understand the range of it, but that's where it's at. All right.
Yeah.
Are those your honorable mentions, or you got more?
No, they're my first 2 on my list. They're 10 and 9. I got a plethora more. So,
Okay.
so I have Isaiah Thomas's ankle in '88, and
Okay.
we all know that legendary game, being able to score, what was it, 25 in the
Yep.
fourth quarter, and
Yep.
and the precedent that he was able to do to carry that team to an eventual deciding game against the Lakers. But that deciding game, we're seeing him then be very inefficient, going for I believe his stat line was 10 and 7 in 28 minutes and 4 steals. So he's bringing up the defensive side for sure, but he's having to then share about the same amount of minutes as Vinnie Johnson. And even though Vinnie was the microwave for that team, he gave you basically the same stat line. So if he hadn't had the ankle injury, I think that we see Isaiah Thomas more in these GOAT point guard debates, because he would have been decisively in that time the only one to three-peat. And while you're being the only one to three-peat with Larry and Magic on the front end, and then obviously MJ on the back end, that decisively brings you more into the spotlight. Now, people, wouldn't change their feelings about Isaiah and the Bad Boy Pistons, but the legacy becomes way more cemented because we bring into account when people three-peat, like that's impressive in amongst himself. And if Isaiah was able to three-peat, then we'd be talking about that team as a lot greater overall, and Isaiah in way different light than we do now.
Right. So my question for you on this is so the Pistons are up 3-2. Isaiah hurts his ankle. He's stiff as shit by game 7. He goes 4 for 12.
Yep.
Barely plays. And then what's even crazier is the LA fans run out on the court when there's still time left for the Pistons to get a shot off. They don't call that or anything like that as well. So the Pistons are literally a shot away from maybe three-peating. A couple things on that. One, just based on, we'll go with you versus the general consensus. One, so the question is for you in general consensus, and then you can tell us where you differ. Where do you have Isaiah Thomas all time now if he's got a three-peat? Magic Johnson's only got 4 titles. Larry Bird's only got 4 titles. He's effectively ended Bird and Magic's run of titles, and he's stalled Jordan's. And he's the best player on 3 straight title teams. And I mean, there's Jordan, Shaq, Russell, and Mikan, and those are the only people that can say that. So where do you think we have Isaiah Thomas now all the time? Where do we look at him all the time versus and where do we look at Magic now? Because like I said, that ankle injury that really impacted Magic's only got 4 rings now.
Right. So again, this because I mentioned before, because a lot of people talk about Steph and Magic as the GOATs. I definitively, to me, Isaiah goes number 3 because even though my 5 for the people who are thinking about point guards, it's Magic, Steph, Jerry, Oscar, then IT, and I think definitively the playoff accolades that Jerry has is definitely unquestioned, and Oscar for his regular season accolades as well as winning a championship puts him up there. But no one compared to those 4 has a three-peat, and that holds some weight to me because if you mentioned being the definitive best person on now 3 title teams in a row, that's irrefutable, and that greatness only can soar you. So I think, to me, I think he'd be number 3.
So, I mean, he's number 3 for me now. I mean, to be honest with you, I'd have a hard time not putting him over Steph. Because I think that Steph can lead me to 2. He can lead me to 3. 3's worth more than 2. I mean, I don't, I get, if he has the MVPs and shit like that, then maybe somewhere. But to me, then he's definitely got an argument for 2. Because if you can lead your team to the most amount of titles at that position, that's what greatness will always be about. It's leading your team to the title. Magic was able to do it. And if that's the case now, we lose that last one. Magic's only led you to 3 as well. Because without a doubt, Kareem was the best player on 80. So now, he's in the tie for whatever. And then how well do we look at it? Like the three-peat, like they're talking. I mean, I see people online all the time talking about Kobe's three-peat when he lost in the finals. They call that a three-peat because he went to 3 straight finals. So where would they have that? Because I mean, in those 3 runs, I mean, he's beaten Bird, Jordan, and Johnson, and I'd say those 3 are still in most people's top 10.
I would agree. And
I think 2 of them are in top 5.
15. Yeah, I think IT bumps up to like top 15 if this
were. I got a top
15 now. For at least general consensus, and at least to me. But I do think that's a great point. Is that how legacy or how we would see Isaiah, that GOAT PG conversation now becomes a lot more fuzzy, and I think it would just be a matter of what you really prefer is the skill and in the on-ball dominance of what Isaiah is giving you, and the dribbling, the skill set, the two-way ability at his size. You're seeing Steph being able to create opportunities off ball and creating opportunities for his teammates and obviously being a great shooter. And then Magic's on-ball dominance in his transition play and being able to be the greatest passer ever. So it's, I think, then more the minutia of what a person prefers. And I don't think there would be a definitive wrong answer, but it would just definitely be way more fuzzy going into these kind of talks.
He'd also be 2-0 against Magic, so that's multiple series now where he's beat the Magic Man and Kareem and
Yeah.
Pat Riley and all that. So that was number 8 on your list, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what do you got for 7?
So 7, I have Dirk Nowitzki's knee in 2003, and why I say that is a lot of people bring up the fact that the time in the Western Conference to me was wide open because you had multiple 50 and 60 win teams: the Mavs, the Spurs, the Kings, and the Lakers. And definitively, they were the favorites. But I do think, even though I'm a Spurs fan, I do think the Mavs, I think, slightly edged out being the favorites during that time. And I think with him going down after that grueling series against the Kings, we could have been talking about Dirk getting won a ring significantly earlier than he did, and he would be. I don't know if he'd be my definitive GOAT power forward, but I think he'd be solidified as universally people's number 2 overall, because if he wins in 03 and if he wins in 2011 with the run that everybody likes to bring up in 2011 with a supporting cast in 2003 with Nash, that puts him in a pantheon of players, which he already is, but it's more like the conversation is now like he's being able to do it with less talent, he's being able to do it with comparable talent, and he's beating definitive comparable teams during the times with a extremely tough Western Conference. So his now competition just gets greater.
No. I agree with that. And then I remember when I watched it, and I forget exactly how it went down. They split one of the games in San Antonio. Then they lost both games in Dallas. Dirk was done. They were completely written off for Game 5. They come back. They win Game 5. They lose Game 6 in Dallas. So I mean, they lost like 3 straight games in Dallas. They didn't win a single home game. So I mean, if they would have won one home game, that might have been completely changed the difference. I remember Nick Van Exel went off in one of those games. I don't remember exactly which one or whatever. But
Game 4.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly because I haven't watched it in over 20 years now. But no. Like, yeah, the question is like, and then what happens with free agents? Does Nash ever leave? Do they keep the teams? Or is there never a 7 seconds or Suns team? You know, now with Nash with more championship experience, do more people want to go over there and flock with them? Although, you know, those mid 2000 Suns teams, it was just bad luck, really. But yeah. No. I mean, I could see the legacy, you know, going down, definitely going up if Dirk goes with that. You know, if he's got 2 rings now as the best player, you know, he might be top 10. People might be arguing that because there's a few guys in there, you know, that they're only top. You know, Wilt's guy that's got 2, Kareem's got 2, Kobe's got 2, Hakeem's got 2, Steph's got 2. So a lot of guys in the top 10. Very rarely does a player ever get to that level where they can lead you to 2 or more titles, best player. I mean, it's a very, very short lift, you know, I don't know, 15 to 18 players, something like that. Not very many people can do it.
And that's why I think that legacy is definitely now put up to a greater spec, because you just mentioned the finite amount of people, and now he gets added to that. How does that affect him overall? And obviously that boosts him to me a lot. If you're being the greatest for 2 definitive teams and now being for 16 through 19, then we're talking about a different story.
No. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So 7th. Who do you got at 6th?
So this is a late change, but this, I think, definitively changes a franchise. Billy Cunningham's wrist in 1968. So for him being the second or third guy, depending on how you kind of cut it, they notoriously blow a 3-1 lead in that year, and immediately after, Wilt is traded. And but just by pure impact of a team organization, we're talking about, I think, Wilt completely differently. We're talking about '60s a lot differently. I don't know if he gets traded to the Lakers, if they definitely win one, of course, but if he's able to stay, if he's more revered, if he is able to rise more than he falls in the playoffs, like that's more organizational changing for me, because obviously going forward, you don't really hear about the Sixers really up until they're able to get Julius and Tony and Mo and Moses and make those runs in the early '80s and late '70s. So I don't know if that transition is as bad as it is, but I think that definitively changes an organization's kind of thinking and their ways of doing things for 10 plus years. And you don't see a lot of that now when people go down, how it can change an organization for years to go down the road.
Well, the real question is this. So they're up 3-1 and Cunningham doesn't play. So if Cunningham plays, do they win? Do the Celtics still win? I would guess no. We don't know, obviously, but my guess would be no. They had just beat him in 5 the year prior. So that means Bill Russell probably never gets a championship as a coach. Now he's stuck at 9 rings instead of 11. Nine's still a lot. Wilt probably never goes to the Lakers because we're coming off back-to-back titles. Why would we send him to the Lakers? What comes of those early '70s Knicks?
Right.
What happens with the '71 Bucks? And I don't know if you got anybody from '71 on your list.
I was heavily thinking about it, but I ended up not.
Okay, so '71. The Bucks beat the Lakers in 6, but Jerry West doesn't play in that series. He's injured in that series. What happens if he plays? So there's so many of these different factors that come in. Then we probably don't get that '72 team that many considered, until the Bulls, the greatest team of all time, that won 69 and 13, won 33 straight games. Do the 76ers constantly win? Does that change their ability to get Dr. J a few years later? Does Wilt play past 74 now, past 73 now? That's the question. So I don't know. I think that's a big one though. But I think Cunningham doesn't get hurt. I think they're at least a back-to-back title team, and we're talking about, I think that 76ers team is one of the great dynasties. Because people don't even talk about a guy like Chet Walker. He's 20 a game.
He's great. Yep.
Yeah, people don't even talk about Greer, Cunningham, Chamberlain, which is understandable. But their fourth is a 20-point a game guy.
Yeah, and that's why I said depending on what people value, I think either Chet and Billy are 2 and 3. I definitively have Billy Cunningham too because he's more of a two-way guy, and I value that. So Chet if Chet's giving you 20 a game, that's cool. That's great. But I also want to lead this into my next point because we're talking about kind of the same era, is Bill Russell's ankle in '58, and notoriously,
this is just talking.
Yeah, this is the next one. I believe 6. Yeah, 6 or 5. And so even though we can say that maybe the Wilt at least gets 2 in a row by this hypothetical, if Bill Russell is able to play in '58 and is able to give you more than he is able to in those subsequent games after Game 3, I think he's still able to give you 10 titles, and definitively he's still the greatest winner of all time. So even if you're able to take away this hypothetical that we kind of talked about with Billy Cunningham and the Sixers, he's 10 years prior, he's still, if he's able to play and to minimize what Bob Pettit's giving you in that closeout game, he's still winning you 10. And if you're giving me 10 titles and being the best on 7, 8 of them, you're still the greatest one of all time. So to me, the impact is still great, but then the legacy is now you're winning 9 straight instead of winning 8 straight.
Well, actually, if they would have won that because they won the first one, that means if they would have won that one, they would have won 10 straight.
10 straight. Yeah, I'm sorry. I misquoted.
Right.
But
So
still,
do you think we look at them different if they win 10 straight as opposed to 8?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the narrative now is, oh, they played plumbers. They're 8-man league, 14-man league. But it's like
Yeah.
the same people who prop up LeBron for making 10 straight finals. Bill Russell is doing that, but winning 10 straight finals. So then it's irrefutable. It's like, okay, now imagine if LeBron is doing that and definitively winning 10. We're talking about him with a Bill Russell winning 10 straight. That you just can't beat that. So definitively, if you're the best player, again, 7 to 8 of them, and are giving you a 10 total, it's completely different overall. Completely.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, people that shit on Bill Russell are still gonna be the same fucking 3 arguments. Played against
Right.
plumbers. There were only 8 teams, and anything else they could think to discredit at that moment in time.
And at least to me, because obviously the generation now is given the participation award of going to 8 straight with LeBron being, obviously 4 and 6, but going a total of 10. We can kind of say, like, okay, now imagine that 60 years prior, but winning all of them. Again,
It'll be segregation basketball, like they say.
Right, and that's leads down a dumb rabbit hole, but it's not a here or there. But to me, that legacy is now cemented, and I think definitively with people, take him out of their top 10 because you haven't watched it. You can just look at the resume. You can just look at Basketball Reference. You can just look his stats up. Yeah, I'm 10 for 10 in a row. No one's going to beat that ever.
No, I agree. Hey, this comes from someone Scott Russell is the GOAT, so I'm all for it.
Right, I thought you'd like that.
What do you got for 4?
So I have a combination of 2 players, but it happened at the same time. And it was Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant in 2019. Okay. And to me, I think we're talking about 3-peats. I think they were the heavy favorites going into that series against the Raptors. And obviously KD got his calf kind of messed up in the conference finals against the Rockets. And so he was already kind of hobbled. But I've never seen a fan base and an organization kind of take their breath away more than 2 superstar guys kind of going down one after another. And it slowly, this narrative kind of slowly changed to be like, well, the Raptors now have a chance to go and beat, Steph and crew. And everybody now cements as Kawhi Leonard being the greatest Raptor. To me, that's blasphemous because he only played 1 year. But Kawhi's legacy changes, I think, if KD and Klay are there, because now definitively the Warriors 3-peat. Steph wins 3 in a row, and I don't know if KD wins a Finals MVP, but let's just say that he gets another one. KD's legacy changes, Curry's legacy changes, Klay Thompson's changes, Draymond's changes, Steve Kerr's changes. So it's more of a kind of a domino effect of going down. And Kawhi is now looked at as this guy who can lead a team of, I wouldn't say nobodies, because you've heard me say it before, I think the Raptors are like the super role players. But he's able to bring these teams who are definitively worse to the best, to at least in NBA Finals, but he can't win. So he's more of a super kind of like number 2 instead of a number 1. And we can kind of talk about Kawhi as being, again, one of these guys who can be a two-way guy, but can he lead you to a definitive best player on the best team? So that's where I think that narrative changes.
So ultimately, so you think that the Warriors do win the 3-peat? Do you think then they still stick it out? Do you think they still leave? What do you think happens there?
I think that they still leave because obviously, infamously, the turmoil between KD and Draymond, I think, do still happen. And even though Draymond, I do think the words are still said amongst each other that we were doing this shit before you, that you were here, and we can still win after you, and so on and
Mhm.
so forth. I do think that KD leaves still, and let's just say he does go to Brooklyn. I don't know if we're now seeing it in the same light to where KD can't definitively be the best on the best team. There's still conversations about that today, but we're seeing it more in a light of, okay, he's a three-time champion, three-time Finals MVP. Can he pull the weight of these guys who are on the Nets to a definitive title? So that narrative is still there, but it's more of he's more accomplished and he's being able to beat the narrative of I don't need them, because I do think the Nets eventually would probably get out there, but that's um, but I don't know.
No, it's definitely interesting and all that. Yeah, because I think that would have. But then the question is too is with everybody leaving and then the injuries and then Klay Thompson not rushing back to the Warriors, then come back in 2020 and win it, in the pandemic, because now Klay Thompson's not struggling but then that caused Curry to go out. I don't know if that was a freak accident. It just seemed like all the bad things that was happening at once. But no,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been an interesting one on that. I would love to see it. Also would have gave
Mm-hmm.
us a potential three-peat. We didn't have a three-peat in a while.
I agree.
I remember when I was watching basketball as a kid, it seemed everybody always three-peated. But
Right.
but now not so much. So all right, so that was is that 5 and 4?
So they were both combined into one, so that is just 5.
Okay, cool. Then it's 4.
So 4 is the year prior. Chris Paul with his hamstring in 2018.
Okay.
I do think like that infamous Game 7 going 0-27 for the Rockets. That didn't help his case, but I actually had Houston beating the Warriors, and I remember everybody calling me crazy. It's like there's no way that they can hold a candle to the Warriors, and I'm like, they have the bigs there, they have the shooting, and they have Chris Paul, who's a playoff riser. And what I think would happen was obviously, if the Warriors lose, Chris Paul goes to the NBA Finals earlier than he was on the Suns, and I actually do think that they beat Cleveland or whoever ends up being their opponent, which is Cleveland, and Chris Paul is now put into way more credible kind of point guard lists because I think to me, at that time, I think he was the best player in the playoffs. Obviously, James Harden is still there, but Chris Paul to me was way more of a 1A than a 1B, and it didn't help that James Harden throughout that postseason was very inconsistent, while Chris Paul was being able to consistently get you 20, 10, 22, and 9 on good efficiency. So we're seeing Chris Paul in a much better light because now as another content creator on TikTok, if I have to hear another Kyrie Irving's over Chris Paul because he has a ring and he doesn't, is gonna just makes me just angry. But Chris Paul is now put into light. It's like, okay, yeah, now it's credible that Chris Paul is there because he won one, which is again a dumb argument. But Chris Paul now is put into a better light than he does, and the Rockets probably keep that team, and they could probably make some runs going forward. I don't know if they win, but that's a way better look for not only Chris Paul, but for definite James Harden too. So that domino effect that I said earlier with KD and Clay, that domino effect definitely goes with James Harden and Chris Paul and friends during that run.
So what do you think the odds are? Because I think this is a good possibility as well. What do you think the odds are that Chris Paul outperforms James Harden in the finals?
I think extremely high. The where I would base this evidence on is the finals that he was in in 21 against the Bucks, because there was conversations being had that if they win, he should win Finals MVP. And there's a conversation with Devin Booker as well. I won't discount that. But to me, if I'm seeing him being able to again put up 20 and 10 on decent efficiency in the finals, that then brings to light that James Harden isn't really good in the playoffs. His true shooting drops, his points per game drops, his assists go up, but his rebounds go down a little bit as well. And he's one of the worst playoff performers in NBA history. While Chris Paul then again continues to rise, and we're seeing Chris Paul again in a way different light. And we're looking at him differently. We're looking at James Harden differently because now he's 1-1, and the domino effect goes down from there.
No, because if I had to guess, I would say Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul was the best performer on the Suns team when they went to the finals. I think the way that he's sneaky and the way that he knows tricks, like he reads the rule book. You know what I mean? He knows rules. Refs don't even know. So yeah, I mean, I think he would have. So now you got Chris Paul, with the Finals MVP, best player on a title team. I mean, I think he's now moved up to that definitive third point guard position. I think a lot of people have. I wouldn't. I would have him as the fourth greatest, but that's. I would have him right up in there though. But I mean, he's up there if anybody can be the best player on the title team, and I think he's looked at completely different.
Yes, I agree. So my next person, and this is extreme bias, but I've been through this before on my lives and my channel, is Kawhi in 2017. And this is why I will forever hate Zaza Pachulia. This is why I will forever hate the Warriors organization, because of the fact that Kawhi's ankle completely changed the trajectory of one man's career and how we look at him, and the whole load management argument is now being propelled because it's specifically one play from a dirty play from a player. And I thought, because people forget this, is that the Spurs were a 60-plus win team, and Kawhi was doing it with a whole bunch of basically aging vets, and the second best person on that team was Marcus Aldridge, who was giving basically 20 and 8 on good efficiency. But they were up by 21 points in game one, right when he got hurt. And we saw that dwindle down very quickly after he went down. And to me, if you're up by 21 points against one of the greatest teams of all time with an all-time lineup, to me, that's, even though it's very small sample size, but in the regular season, they had a winning record against the Warriors. And if you're up by 21 points with an aging vet team, to me, you should have probably beat that team. And taking out the best person who is in MVP talks on a 60-plus win team definitively changes the Spurs organization going forward, with Kawhi leaving and that the whole turmoil. The Spurs still boo him as soon as he gets in there, and we see then Kawhi now being able to play these next 7 years pretty healthy. He's probably still load managing, but to me he's probably playing at least 60 to 65 games a year, and he, to me, is definitively a top 3 small forward and probably a top 20 NBA player of all time.
Where do you think he's at now?
I have him at around 28, 29, or 30. He's inside the 30, but I will admit that I'm a Kawhi stan. I will live and die by that man. He's probably my favorite player of all time. So I probably rank him a lot higher than a lot of people do. But if we're going down this route, if he stays healthy, I do think in 2017 the Spurs win the title. If he doesn't miss 2018, they're definitely again in contention. And we're seeing this light where Kawhi doesn't leave and he goes to the Raptors and he wins on the Raptors. We're seeing him stay on the Spurs and probably be a lifer there because Tony gets shipped off, Timmy retires, Manu retires, so we see this next guard of Kawhi, LaMarcus Aldridge, DeJounte Murray, Derek White, and like a vessel to where they're still a powerhouse in the West going into the early 20s and late teens.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be, again, biased because I'm a Spurs fan, but that's where my head is at.
No, I mean that completely did. I mean, and then you also got to realize, especially with like recency bias and all that. I mean, they could have been wanting to blow it up 1 year after the Warriors if not working out. Like, hey, this ain't gonna work out. They could have not have too. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that's definitive, but I mean, I could just see people, panicking. What are we gonna do? That kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely think that would be. And then we get to see LeBron and Kawhi again in the finals. So
Correct.
What would happen there.
Correct.
So that was 4, right?
That was 3. That was 3.
3. Okay. What do we got for 2?
So number 2, and I think this is kind of almost like a given, is D Rose's knee in 2012, and he becomes obviously with his knee injury one of the greatest what ifs because after that, we see him in New York, we see him in Minnesota, we see him on the Grizzlies and all these teams and just being a role player. But people forget that team had the second most favored odds to win the title that year. And we've talked about this before because the year prior, Derrick Rose gets completely shut down by LeBron. And I think for this team, for them running it back, with that year under his belt, I think he's able to mature as a scorer, as a playmaker, and he's definitively having guys in the playoffs who are averaging 15 plus points, damn near double doubles with Joakim Noah, Boozer, Noel Dang is being able to step up, so it doesn't necessarily hurt them in any way. I don't know if they could beat the Heatles, but I think they give them a really good shot at coming out of the East. And if they were to beat the Heatles, I think they completely destroy the Thunder. Because if we're talking about baby teams, we talk like that's a baby, KD, that's a baby Russ, that's a baby James Harden, that's a baby Ibaka. So Derrick Rose now becomes a champion, a MVP, obviously under his belt, best player and best team, and now the Chicago Bulls now can go into another era of trying to revolve around a small guard, and they can finally get away from Michael Jordan, and they can build this culture going into the future with Thibodeau. They have a rising Jimmy Butler. They probably draft a lot better than they do, so they become a way better, probably ran organization instead of being, no offense, Bulls fans, irrelevancy for years to come.
Where do you think if Derrick Rose doesn't get hurt, where do you think he gets put all time? Does he make, is he a top 10 player, top 20 player, top 30? Where would you have him?
He's probably top. I think he's top 50 because what I brought up before, him being shut down by LeBron as an MVP definitely hurts his argument. But if he's able to run it back and at least either make it a very competitive series against the Heatles and or win, I think that can elevate him. But I wouldn't put him in top 10 PG talks. If he does, he's probably 10. And it's more for his legacy. He doesn't go into this what if. We see him as who he is and what he's able to flourish to. And we're seeing an organization now be able to be relevant and be able to be holding a grip onto the East for years to come. Because obviously with him being hurt, we see the Pacers, we see sort of the Knicks and so on and so forth. But with Chicago being a big market and them being able to draft decently well for the near future, they are able to now turn the page of Michael Jordan and now go and write the story of Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah and Jimmy Butler and have this young core for these years to come. So that's more for team impact as well as the what if and going forward to see what they can do.
So then, with that being said, who's your number one?
This is probably the most controversial thing, but I will stand by this because I had to do extreme research to kind of put this point. This is a healthy debate. I put Sam Cassell's hip injury as the number one injury on NBA history, and why I say this is because that the narrative is that at that point is KG's being bounced in the first round 7 straight years, and that Timberwolves team really isn't much of anything. KG, has to go win an MVP, and with his contract, the Timberwolves can only, make a small window for them to be competitive. And they go get Sam Cassell, they go get Latrell Sprewell to try and go and make this competitive. When Cassell goes down, we're having to see Latrell Sprewell and KG basically bring the ball up because they have no other ball handler. So the fact that we're seeing a guy who's 6'11" basically having to run point guard at that time is completely, blowing a lot of people's minds. But that adds to what KG can do. Mm-hmm. But I looked at the box scores for that year because they ultimately lost against the Lakers that year. And did you know that the Timberwolves decisively won their series against the Lakers that year 3-1? And people who know that year will say then, okay, well, Shaq and Kobe didn't play for one of those games. That's cool. Mm-hmm. They still won that series if they played 3 games 2-1 and by double digits, by 15 points plus. They only lost 1 game against them, and that's when I believe it was in late February, and I think KG was like managing. I believe he only played like 28 minutes. So matchups wise, they had extremely good matchup against the Lakers because what they were trying to implement in the season is a lot of what the Pistons are notoriously known for. Bringing the pressure up, trying to trap Kobe and trying to make him try to get Shaq off his spot. The Timberwolves were doing that in the West. Just a lot of people forget about it because it's the Pistons doing that in the finals on the biggest stage. So if Cassell is able to stay, they decisively win a lot of their matchups. Malone's knees is still in question, but Sprewell and KG are going to take turns on the wing on Karl Malone and kind of just, I guess, kind of deal with what Shaq is going to give you. But I think in the East, if they make that finals, they won by 1 point against the Pistons in that year. So that finals is definitely not set in stone. I can't tell you who would win or lose, but they would make it a very competitive series. I think that series probably goes to 7, but their strengths are being able to outmatch what the Lakers are being able to provide, and Cassell specifically is the vocal point of what they can do. And I know that's definitely a controversial thing that I'm saying, but I think if Cassell is definitely there, we're not seeing them get blown out in 5 games, and we're seeing them at least make a finals compared to what obviously the lack of playoff success for 25 years after the fact.
Right. Well, I'm gonna read off some of mine. I'm with you on that. I thought the Timberwolves could have beat them there. I thought that 04 was weird in general. You know what I mean? There was a lot of I think the Kings played really good till Weber's injury came back. The Kings were playing amazing. I tell everybody, Brad Miller on that team from like October to February till Weber comes back played amazing. You know what I mean? With the numbers, with the way the unit ran. But so here's some of the ones that I want to say that weren't brought up, and then I'll just name them all off and see what you want to dive into real quick, and then we're going to take off. One is the 77 Blazers, 78 Blazers. They start off next season with 50-8. Walton still wins the MVP. They're the defending champs. Walton, feet just finally really give out on him. If Walton didn't get hurt, their top 8 guys were 26 and under. So
you said 26 and under?
Yeah, their top 8 guys were 26 and under.
So they have a young core, so they could probably repeat.
Right. Repeat, run it back. And you got to realize by that's 26 when they won it in 77. So that means by 1980, when Magic and Kareem are starting to take off, that means all those guys are 29. So now are we just going back and forth, for the first, 5-6 years? Are there trades being brought in? Are more people want to? I think more people would want to play with Walton. He passes you the ball, he plays defense. A lot of people generally like playing with guys like that. Another one, 93 Suns. They're missing Cedric Ceballos. Cedric Ceballos is a 13-point a game, 60% shooting, 21-minute a game guy. Is he worth a point? I don't know, because then the Bulls scored the same amount. So is he worth a point? 95 Suns. They start off 36-10 with Manning, best team in the league. Joe Klein or Danny Shanes falls into his knee. They're not the same. They go 59-20. They lose to the champs, the Rockets, who they're up 3-1. They definitely give the Rockets their best challenge as well. So there's that one. 2006, the Suns are missing 3/5 of their starting lineup. You know what I mean? Does that change? That's another one of mine. And then really, I like that the Celtics run for their first 4 years. 2008, they win the title. 2009, he gets hurt. Garnett gets hurt. 2010, they're missing Kendrick Perkins in the final game, as well as that bullshit fourth quarter where the Lakers got a 21-6 free throw advantage. And then in 2011, and I forget the exact number, but I think it's something like this, and if not, it's very close. When Rondo, Pierce, Allen, Garnett, and Shaq all played with the 2011 Celtics, do you know they were like 28-3?
No, I did not know that, but I could assume.
Yeah, they were like 28-3. So out of those ones, which ones really stand out to you?
Because I'm doing the research for myself, Manning definitely points out to me probably the most, because I was considering running him down. I just think some of the guys that I wrote down, that Danny Manning, 95.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that because we talked about it before, 2006, the 3/5 of the starting lineup for the Suns, I think is definitely worth mentioning, because I think they should have gotten at least one, because that now credits, Steve Nash being the best player and the best team, being on the best offense of all time. So Steve Nash now is considered again a top 5 point guard of all time, and I do think the Garnett one I wanted to push, because I'm a huge KG guy, but with the Kendrick Perkins and KG argument is where my argument has always been, because I love, like, for the people who are watching, for people who will watch, I'm not a Paul Pierce guy. I think he's an inefficient shot chucker, and I think he robbed KG in 2008. Now, that narrative would have completely changed a year after if Paul Pierce was going to be able to definitively be the best player on that team. But no, they lose because of the fact that Kevin Garnett's defense isn't being able to be as impactful because of his injury. So I would definitely say, I think out of everything you said, I think KG's injury is the best one to me, because that narrative to me is now KG is now a 2-time champion, defensive player of the year, an MVP, leading probably two of the greatest defenses in modern day history, and that narrative of Paul Pierce is a better player than KG 2008 is now completely washed. So I'm with that.
Well, I think they could have won 4 straight.
I think they could have won 4 straight, but as being, like, I'm a huge Pau Gasol guy, so I don't know if they could have, but I do think that the competition is still there, because I do think that they could at least make 4 straight finals. I think they could definitively probably win 2 or 3, but with the emergence of that late or like those super early Lakers teams with Kobe, Powell, Bynum, and Odom, They could have definitely ran for their money. So I kind of lead towards them, but I think 4 finals appearances is definitely not out of the question for sure.
Well, there you had it, man. That's it. We're up. We're out. We'll be back next week. Worse than ever. I'm Tony. That's Jules. And just remember, everybody, bless the ones who broke you, because they're the ones who built you. See y'all next.
Oh, Canada.
Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.